Hey everybody, it's Terry and Tim here from Money Matters for Everybody.
Hello.
Hopefully you all had a good week. So today we wanted to come to you briefly to talk about
Recent medical issue.
Yes, medical stuff.
Yeah.
We want to talk about medical claims.
The racket that is the medical system.
The racket that is.
If you can't tell, I have very little trust and faith in the medical system.
Medical establishment, and I think it's getting worse. So I wanted to talk briefly because money matters for everybody. It really does. And I had written an article about financial toxicity. I'd come back from a nursing conference out in Texas last month, and one of the topics of discussion was financial toxicity for cancer treatment. I work in the field of oncology research. I have my own opinion. Has really driven what I'm willing and what I'm not willing to do.
Right.
I'm not willing to drive my family into financial toxicity for a cancer diagnosis. But I wanted to talk to you today about a recent topic that came up for medical claims. We have a high deductible insurance plan that's coupled with, I always mess up the terms, health savings account. I previously mentioned that between my employer and myself, we pay about $24,000, $25,000, $26,000 to the insurance provider, to the health insurance provider for my family of four. But before anything even kicks in, we have a $3,000 deductible if we're in network, and we are always going to be in network. Yeah. I mean, I don't think it would be a very rare occurrence that we were not in network.
Only if there was something like really rare and there was a certain specialist that was the only one to see it.
Exactly. So we're very careful with that. Also, because of how the system works and because money matters to everybody, I actually review every single claim. So that's one of the topics in today's discussion. So I look at every single claim because I want to verify that the services rendered were indeed accurate. If you're ever in a hospital situation where you're hospitalized, I would really recommend that you sit down with maybe an advocate and look at the bill. You know, so in this particular instance, I had written an article about this one thinks that he's like a teenager, and so he has no fear, and he's out snowboarding with the kids, which is great because I think somebody should be on the mountain and they shouldn't be there by themselves. And it's kind of boring to sit in the car, or sit in the cabin. So Tim has learned how to snowboard, and you're actually quite good for a 40-something.
Yeah, for picking it up 2 years ago, I think I'm doing all right.
Exactly, but one night he took a fall while he was snowboarding and landed on his right shoulder, right?
Yeah.
Okie dokie. Didn't want to tell me when he came home, like he like grinned and bared it as best you could, right? And then the kids were like, "Dad hurt himself," and he doesn't want you to know, because I would probably say something like, "Do you think you're 12?" So I think you managed to go to the doctor for that one as well.
Yeah, I did go to the doctor for that.
Orthopedic doctor. And we're very conscious of how we use our insurance. So if we feel like it can be managed by primary care, we go to primary care. If we feel like it can be managed through using a teledoc service or a provider similar to that, because I think teledoc is aligned with Aetna, which we don't have, we will use those services. Like, I'm a nurse. I feel pretty comfortable, like, directing, right? Saying, okay, I think that you need this, or you need primary care, or we can just do a teledoc visit because we just need an antibiotics and some steroids. But I look at every single claim, every single time. And a claim came through recently for this one who thinks he's a teenager. Tim was trying to demonstrate to his track team how to jump over the
hurdles. I managed to show him the wrong way to do it.
I believe they were all afraid to fall, and then you landed on your right shoulder. Is that correct?
Yep.
So that injury, you rested it. We taped it, medicated with some anti-inflammatories, and iced it, and heated it, and tried to do everything to get it.
Right, and because I had that previous injury that was not deemed serious through x-rays and such, I used that as my barometer.
Right.
And as long as it wasn't hurting more than that, I wasn't going to go to the doctors.
Excellent.
Yeah, I mean, it had started feeling better. It had about a month gone by, and then Ryan had asked me to have a catch with him. So I had a catch with him for a little while, and the next day, and pretty much every day since, my shoulder's been bothering me.
So you've also been doing some physical therapy moves, right? YouTube is great, by the way, if you're ever, like, you want to understand how you can support your shoulder with therapeutic physical therapy moves. But your pain had not been going away. So the initial injury this time around happened in March.
Yeah, I heard it in March. It was feeling better, and then it was around end of April or so that I was having a catch with Ryan.
Okay. And then wound up injuring it again. So early June, end of May, you scheduled a doctor's appointment to go see the orthopedic doctor locally, same doctor you've seen, same practice you've seen previously. And we got a notification from the insurance provider that your claim is available to review and that your balance due is $363. You're responsible for $363. I felt like that was high, so I opened the claim, but I would open it regardless of whatever it was. And I noted that the office visit was coded to an office or outpatient visit for a new patient up to 45 minutes. So there's two issues with that. First off, you're not a new patient. Anytime you've had any type of issue with your
Yeah, anything
orthopedics,
orthopedic, I've gone back to that same practice.
as recently as 2 years ago.
Yeah.
New problem is not new patient. So, and then the second part was you spent like 20, 25 minutes with the doctor and they're billing it for up to 45 minutes. I am aware that you can bill in up to 15 minutes, up to 30 minutes, up to 45 minutes. So I'm assuming it's in 15-minute increments. The amount billed to the insurance for this particular practice was $898. Is that crazy?
Yeah, for a couple x-rays and...
Well, that was just the office visit. The
Okay.
x-ray was billed at $188 for an x-ray of the shoulder for 2 views. Did they take 2?
Yeah.
Okay. And the insurance said that we owe on that
$44.
$44.45. So I have a call. I called the health insurance provider and I said, this is not correct because he's not a new patient, first off. Second off, I'm pretty sure he wasn't with the doctor for 45 minutes. So that should be changed down to a 30-minute, under less than 30-minute visit. And now I have to go reach out to the provider, which I tried to do this morning. And you can talk to billing, but you can't talk to, there's nowhere, like when you click to talk to billing, they say, okay, if you want to pay your bill, but there's no option for, I've reviewed my insurance claim and I feel like you've upcharged me, right? So I have it in writing. I actually went through the portal yesterday and submitted a message in writing expressing my concerns that you have been upcharged. But so my question for you is, do you review your medical claims? Because we do. This is something that's important. And why? Well, I did a quick Google search this morning, and apparently medical billing errors are quite common. This is not uncommon, especially in the case of a hospital stay, because they nickel and dime you for a saline syringe is $50. Like a Tylenol is $75. Like it's bananas. I'll bring my own, thanks, I'm good. And also because of the amount that we pay for insurance, we're not alone in this, I'm sure. Everybody's on the hook. Everybody's on the hook when insurance prices are mishandled or misused. Right. So our family pays about $24,000 to $26,000 combined with my employer. Could you imagine if they just put that into our paycheck?
Yeah.
And then when these upcharges occur, if people aren't looking at their claims, they are potentially being incorrectly billed. Maybe they don't understand the claim because there are issues with the explanation of benefits as well. So when I pulled the explanation of benefits, it's different than when I actually look at the app and it says office visit, CPT code 99204, office or outpatient visit for a new patient. But then when you look at the explanation of benefits, it doesn't go into that detail. It just says office visit. So if a patient was just looking and had no curiosity whatsoever and just said it is what it is, then you're on the hook. And that means that the insurance provider is paying more money than they should be to the provider providing care. And that means that next year, all of our insurance goes up.
Right.
So billing errors, they're costly. And I don't have an exact figure, but errors increase the payout and then they increase premiums down the line. So other things that I would recommend doing, we already talked about how we try to mitigate and manage. Okay, we're going to primary care. I have taken TJ to the urgent care. We have an urgent care locally, and they charge the maximum out of pocket is $299, the maximum that they
Yeah,
bill.
I mean, we always save emergency rooms as a very last resort.
They should be, because the emergency rooms actually do have to enter the building, they're going to charge you a couple $1,000s, right? If not tens of thousands of dollars. But then also, by looking at the claim, a couple weeks ago, this one had to go to a podiatrist. I think you're getting old. I'm starting to think you're getting old. And he went in for an office visit, and he had pulled up the doctor under the medical insurance looking for a podiatrist, right? Yeah. And they came in network, and then when it came through as a medical claim, it was marked as out of network. So there's a big red X on it.
Yeah, so I called them, and they reprocessed the claim and did it as in network, and that got taken care of at least.
Yep. So this was an outpatient office or outpatient visit with a new patient, and you indeed were new there for $237.54 to meet with a podiatrist. So might be better. So in that case, we contacted, and these things take time, right? Like, so I recommend, and this is my best practice, if you see an error, you put it in writing. I like to write, so I just pull up a little letter with letterhead for us, and I go ahead and I just type, because then I have the date and what happened and how it happened, and then I can fax that over, and then we'll follow up. It takes time, and I think that legislatively we really have to do something about people's time. because my time is not free.
Right.
And I'm doing work that shouldn't need to be done. So there should be some type of penalty or reimbursement to the patient having to take care of these errors. And then there should also be like a red flag somewhere that says, the insurance, I feel like, was like, okay, if you have an error, you have to go back to the provider. They should be on the hook at some point in time to track.
Yeah.
If you're getting
they're the one paying a good chunk of that bill.
And they don't even know. So I think there should be steps in place where the claim should come through the insured. The insured says, yes, I received those services as listed, and then the insurance reviews it and pays it. And obviously, you should have 24 to 48 hours, which should be a limited amount of time for the insured to look at it and approve. And if you don't reject it or challenge it,
it automatically approves after a certain amount of time.
Exactly, and then you can still go back if it was inaccurate for up to like a couple years, in my opinion. But there should be some tracking mechanism that say this particular provider, we're signaling that there's an error. I'm sure we're not the only ones that somebody else is saying, okay, we've had like 10 errors in the last month with this provider. Maybe it's time for an audit.
Right.
And then if it's a continued occurrence, there should be a heavy fine for it. Anyhow, I just think that I'm not sure what the answer is. I'm not sure what the answer is. Do you know what the answer is? Don't use it.
Yeah, try to avoid going to the doctors if you need to.
That's the one thing that we do. We just simply try to avoid going to the doctor. We try to avoid using the medical system at all costs, unless there's an acute problem that can't be managed at home. And try to TJ has had some adult onset asthma issues, probably because of pollution. So he mows lawns, and we did find, like you're breathing in dust, or if you're working around leaves, that you should be wearing a mask. And then if you start getting these symptoms, like our kids, I'm a 12 and 16-year-old. I don't know kids that use a neti pot like our kids do.
Yeah, they do it a lot.
When they're not feeling well, it's like, okay, I'm going to go use a neti pot, which is a huge win, in my opinion. You don't use the neti pot too much, but if you have junk in there, you just need to clean it out. I don't think there's any harm in that.
Yeah.
Some people will argue you don't want to do it too often because you're getting rid of good bacteria as well. And I think, if you were doing it every week, that would probably be a problem. If you're doing it as you feel congested, I don't think that there's a problem with that. Was there anything else about that that you wanted to talk about?
No.
So we look at every claim. The insurance this year, I will say I went to the dentist today, and they're not in network. So I'm not changing my dentist.
Yeah, but even with our dentist being out of network, the bills have not typically been outrageous.
No.
And I have even more mistrust of dental practices than I do doctors. So.
Well, I think you actually like this dentist in particular. But yeah, you have had some.
I've gotten
weird experiences.
Really ripped off by dentists in the past, so I have zero faith in them.
And I did talk to the dentist's office this morning because I was like in rare form about this insurance claim that I have to take time to deal with today. And we were actually talking about how even some insurance at some dental practices are going corporate, right? And there is this, like, I don't know that this particular provider that you use for your shoulder has gone corporate, but there's these private equity firms now entering the healthcare space. And I would like to know if the provider I'm seeing is funded by private equity, because if they are, I would not go to that practice, or I would spend more time up front saying, how much is it going to cost? Okay, right. How much is your out of pocket? Or I think what we might actually start doing is saying, I'm going to need to know your cash rate. And if they give you a cash rate that's outrageous, you find another provider. This week I did read an article that said that so far this year, 6 hospitals have closed. And last year, 19 hospitals closed in the U.S. So I do think that there's going to come a point in time where we're just not going to have insurance, and you're going to step away from the medical system, and you're going to go back to the basics of taking care of your body. There's so many good YouTube instructors out there. I follow Dr. Eric Berg. Recently started following this, I think his name is Dr. Mandel. I've been following Dr. Bean since the beginning of COVID, when I thought that I was going crazy with the information that was coming out, and understanding how the immune system works, only to be told, yeah, if you had COVID, you should still take the vaccine. And I was like, what? Like, that's not how the immune system works. So I think there's a lot of good providers out there on YouTube that share information, and ultimately you are responsible for your health. You're responsible for your wellness, both physical, mental, spiritual, financial. And you should take the time to understand what options are out there. Sometimes taking a pill should never be the first option.
Right.
Oftentimes your body is signaling to you if there's an error, if there's a problem. And I had that happen recently where I was having some upper right abdominal pain. I had never had it before. It was not sharp. It was like a dull pain. And I went to the doctor because it was concerning enough. And of course, talking to my mom, she's like, oh, that's gallbladder. That's your gallbladder for sure. And I was like, I had no idea. So I did manage to go to the doctor, and the doctor recommended labs and an ultrasound and also a low-fat diet, which I said, maybe I should just not eat. But going through and watching like videos from Dr. Berg talking about the gallbladder was really helpful and reminded me that maybe it's time to get back to like a low carb. It's not the fat, but it's the carb and the fat and the gallbladder and the liver, and trying to take a homeopathic approach that is less cost. Doesn't cost anything to do low carb and fasting, and uses less resources. As a follow-up to that, I also went for the ultrasound on a Saturday locally, and the ultrasound tech never showed up. So that's the status, I guess, of healthcare in this country. And they had indicated, the receptionist, who was lovely, right? Like, it's not her fault that the tech didn't show up. And I really hope the tech was okay. Like that, I think, coming off the heels of my brother just dropping dead, I was kind of like, oh gosh, I hope she's okay, you know? And it was a reminder that the status of healthcare in the country. But also, the receptionist recommended I go to the hospital. I was in an outpatient center because outpatient centers are cheaper than the hospital. And she recommended that I have my ultrasound done at the hospital. And I just said, no, I'm not going to the hospital. I know it's going to cost more money. The hospital is where sick people go that are in acute crisis mode. And then lastly, the last thing I wanted to talk about is having, like in the past, having had a visit to the emergency room via ambulance. There was one time where Tim had like what appeared to be a cardiac event. To me, as a nurse, my assessment was he might be having a heart attack, right? You remember your symptoms, like just clammy, sweaty, like
tightness in chest,
tightness in the chest. So I called an ambulance. The ambulance confirmed he wasn't having a heart attack. And at that point, I should have had you step out of the ambulance and into my car, and I would have driven you to the hospital. But I wasn't given that option. They took Tim to the hospital, and I received a bill for $1,500. The insurance was not in network for this provider. Turns out, after digging and digging and digging, nobody is in network for this ambulance service except for Medicare and Medicaid. So if you're private party insurance, you're SOL. I was not about to pay $1,500 for an ambulance ride, for a 15-minute ambulance ride. But also, like looking, if you ever look overhead and you see a medevac helicopter going overhead, those are $40,000 transits. Thank you. $40,000 transits. And this is just, to me, it's bananas what's going on in this country, and that people can wind up in financial ruin because of a medical mishap. So I oftentimes will remind my family, like, be very careful. Both of my boys, I have boys, and they're boys. They will jump out of things and jump off of things, and I'm like, I don't want to go to the ER.
And sometimes the kids do it too.
So bad. So the purpose of today is to really just kind of talk about, do you look at your medical claims? Do you have a plan in place to protect your health and your wellness and your wealth by taking on more of a wellness approach to your health? Less stress, good diet and nutrition, good sleep, and an overall balanced lifestyle that supports wellness, because it's hard to do in this country.
Yeah.
It's very expensive living here, generally speaking, and as a result of that, I think that you have to take every preventative measure to take care of your body and to reduce your healthcare costs.
Yeah.
Because I do think people are opting out.
Yeah, I mean, I would.
People are opting out.
Yeah, some people are deciding, you know, it's not worth my time to go to the doctor.
Well, I know with TJ recently, I took him to the doctor just to follow up on his asthma, and they wanted to prescribe him Singular. And I said, okay. I came home and we pulled up the Singular package insert, and there's a black box warning for, what was it, suicidal ideation?
Yeah.
And TJ looks at me and he goes, I'm sorry, but I'm not taking that. And I said, no need to apologize. Like, I wouldn't take it either. I forgot that I had a black box warning. And I think that there's other mechanisms. They're not as well studied, right? They're not, these are not, what was it?
Butterbur.
Butterbur was the natural anti-leukotriene herbal supplement. And it's not as well studied because Butterbur comes from nature. Who's going to study nature? What I would like to know is, like, are there any cross reactivities? And also with Butterbur, I was like, does it have the same suicidal ideation as a side effect? And trying to dig through. So there's a lot of time spent on Google Scholar just to see. Ultimately, TJ managed his most recent symptoms with rest, hydration with water, adequate diet, vitamin D, vitamin C, and I think we got through that
Yep.
one. So anyhow, I hope you found this helpful, and I hope that you have a good week and get to work.
Have a good one, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.